So now let's talk about viscosity and surface tension. Viscosity is the resistance of a liquid to flow. Okay? A liquid flows by sliding molecules over each other. And the stronger the intermolecular forces, the higher the viscosity. Okay? Viscosity or the viscous meaning malapot. Okay? So the higher the intermolecular force, the higher is the viscosity. Next, the surface tension is about the bulk molecules are equally attracted to their neighbors. Now, to illustrate surface tension, here we can see the attraction of the molecules in the surface and in the bulk. From that image, we can see that the surface molecules are only attracted inwards, right, towards the bulk of the molecules. And therefore, the surface molecules are packed more closely than the bulk molecules. Then surface tension is the amount of energy required to increase the surface area of a liquid. There are cohesive forces that bind molecules to each other and adhesive forces that bind molecules to the surface. Now, surface tension is responsible for the meniscus or the shape of the liquid surface, right? So remember that in measurement, right, liquids tend to form this lower meniscus. So lower meniscus yung niliread natin. If adhesive forces are greater than the cohesive forces, the liquid surface is attracted to its container more than the bulk molecules. Therefore, the meniscus is U-shaped, right? So we measure the lower, okay, part of the meniscus. Then, if cohesive forces are greater than the adhesive forces, the meniscus is curved downwards. Okay? Now, um, another importance of the surface tension is what we call capillary action. It is it happens when a narrow glass tube is placed in water or any liquid, and then the meniscus pulls the water up the tube. So maybe some of you observe this if you are uh, you have taken blood samples in your fingertips, right? Di ba parang bubutas lang doon nung parang may ball pen. And then tututok yung tube na manipis. Then kusa nang aakyat yung blood dun sa capillary tube without any suction or pump, right? So that's the importance of surface tension. Okay, now that we have somehow discussed the intermolecular forces, let's now go back to how does a solution form. Okay, again, as a solution forms, the solvent pulls solute particles apart and surrounds or solvates them. For example, this molecule, the solvent particles, okay, pulls the solute particles apart, and then they surround them. Okay. Now, if an ionic salt, for example, the sodium chloride, is soluble in water, it is because the ion dipole interaction are strong enough to overcome the lattice, okay, or the ionic interaction of the salt crystal. Remember, for a solution to occur, okay, the solute-solvent interaction must be greater than the solvent-solvent and the solute-solute. Okay? Okay? Now, just remember that dissolution is a physical change. Okay? So, just because a substance disappears after coming into contact with the solvent, it does not mean that the substance dissolves. Okay? In dissolution, you can get back the original solute by evaporating the solvent. Okay? So if you can recover the solute. Okay? The substance did not dissolve. It now reacted. Okay? Now, let's go to the different types of solutions. First, we have unsaturated. Our keyword here is less. Okay? Less than the maximum amount of solute for that temperature is dissolved in the solvent. Okay? Now, after unsaturated is the saturated, meaning the solvent holds as much solute as possible, or 100%, at that temperature. Okay? So dissolved solute is in dynamic equilibrium with solid solute particles. Okay? Lastly, we have supersaturated solution in which the solvent holds more solute than is normally possible at that temperature. So how do we prepare the supersaturated solution? So let's say we have a solvent that has a capacity of 100 grams, okay, at room temperature or 25 degrees Celsius. Okay? If we have, let's say, a beaker, if we put, let's say, initially 50 grams of the solute in the solvent, okay, since the amount is less than the maximum capacity, okay, this is now your unsaturated solution. Okay? Now, if we have another container with a solvent, let's put exactly 100 grams. Then everything dissolves, right? So this is your saturated. Okay? Again, we have another container. If we put 125 grams, of course, not all of it will dissolve, right? So 100 grams would be dissolved, and then there are remaining solids here. Okay? So that's not your supersaturated. That's still saturated with excess solute. Okay? Now, what do we do in order to dissolve the excess 25 grams? We will heat the solution, right? So when temperature increases, so remember, this maximum amount is only at 25 degrees Celsius. Remember that the kind of solution also depends on the temperature. Okay? So let's say we heat this one, okay? Then all this time, all 125 grams is dissolved, and then it cooled down to 25 degrees Celsius. That is now your super saturated solution. But it must be at 25 degrees Celsius and more than the maximum must be dissolved, okay, at that temperature. Okay, so I hope that's clear with the difference between the three. And usually, supersaturated solutions are employed in crystallization studies, okay, and usually done by stimulating the crystallization by adding acid or scratching the side of the flask or the container. Again, the factor affecting solubility is like dissolves like, right? Or the solute solvent interaction, wherein polar substances tend to dissolve in polar solvents and non-polar substances tend to dissolve in non-polar solvents. Okay, the intermolecular forces are important. For example, water and ethanol are miscible because the broken hydrogen bonds in both pure liquids are reestablished in the mixture. And in terms of the number of carbons, okay, in a chain, so the more carbons, the less soluble in water. So to demonstrate that, here you can see methanol, ethanol, and propanol, which are soluble in water. But as the number of carbon or the length of the carbon chain increases, okay, so the solubility in water decreases, meaning these three could be polar, okay, so it dissolves in polar solvent, and this could be non-polar, hence it only dissolves in non-polar solvents such as hexane. Okay? And again, the more similar the intermolecular attraction, the more likely one substance is to be soluble in another. For example, the glucose, okay, which has hydrogen bonding here, would be very soluble in water as compared to this cyclohexane, which has only London dispersion forces. Another example is that the vitamin A is soluble in non-polar compounds, wherein the vitamin C, okay, is only soluble in water since there are many hydrogen bonding. Next, another factor that affects solubility, especially for gases, is the pressure, wherein solubility of the gas in a liquid is the function of the pressure of the gas. In general, the solubility of gases in water increases with increasing mass because remember, the larger the molecule, it has stronger dispersion forces. Now, the solubility of liquids and solids does not change with pressure, but for gases, it is proportional to its pressure. So for example, in here, the pressure is less, so it would be less soluble as compared to this one, which has more pressure on it. Okay, in addition, the higher the pressure, the more molecules of a gas are close to the solvent, okay? And the greater the chance of a gas molecule to strike the surface and enter the solution. Therefore, the higher the pressure, the greater the solubility. And the lower the pressure, the fewer molecules of the gas are close to the solvent and the lower solubility. Now, if the solubility of the gas, okay, K is a constant, then the pressure is the partial pressure of the gas. The Henry's law gives that the solubility of the gas is equal to a constant K multiplied by the partial pressure of the said gas. Now, as an example of the pressure effects in solubility is the carbonated drinks or mga soft drinks. Because carbonated beverages are bottled with a partial pressure of carbon dioxide greater than the 1 atmospheric pressure. Okay, so it is pressurized. So as the bottle is opened, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide decreases, and so does the solubility of carbon dioxide. Okay? Therefore, bubbles of carbon dioxide escape from solution. So we can see it as we open a kind of soft drink or beverage. Okay, there are bubbles, right, escaping from the bottle. Now, in our experience, it tells us that sugar, right, or any other substances dissolves better in warm water than cold, right? Okay, that's why we use hot water, right, in dissolving like coffee, etc. Right? As temperature increases, the solubility of solids generally increases. Okay, so we can dissolve more if we heat the solvent, right? But sometimes, okay, there is just a few exceptions wherein increasing the temperature leads to a decrease in solubility, for example, in cesium sulfate, but these are very special cases. Another thing is that when we experience it, tells us that carbonated beverages go flat as they get warm. For example, hindi natin nainom agad yung soft drink. Kaya parang nawawala yung feel, no? Yung parang sabi nila walang espiritu. Okay? Therefore, gases get less soluble as temperature increases. So it is important, for example, in the principle of thermal pollution, wherein if hot water, okay, is released in lakes or bodies of water, for example, the controversial topic now with data centers. So they will intake water, use it to cool their system. Of course, the water will absorb the heat and will be released as hot water. Okay. So with that, if lakes gets too warm, okay, the temperature gets so high, carbon dioxide and oxygen will become less soluble because gases get less soluble at increasing temperature. And if carbon dioxide and water becomes less soluble, okay, it would be not available for plants or animals to survive in that body of water. Okay?